Welcome everybody to this masterclass on power positions in Overwatch 2. What I wanted to go over is just something what's been asked a lot by multiple players is how to position yourself so you can create more pressure on the objective, on the enemy, maybe also help out your team a little bit more. And I think this topic is pretty important. There's gonna be not too much theory. We're gonna be focusing on the practical examples a little bit more. The way we're gonna structure this is, first, we're gonna go over the benefits of the power positions, what those are allowing you to do, and then we will take a look at 3 examples of tank, support, DPS, applying the same ideas. And after that, if we have time, I'm also gonna share some examples of the power positions. Let's start with general overview. Power position overview. The way I would simplify this, power positions are positions which allow you to have more options, or in other words, angles of attack on the objective or card. Here I prepared some examples, simple example in the Hollywood, or there's a Busan. You see those marked positions, the red one, this is where you usually start. I'm just gonna make this slide bigger. You start somewhere around here, and then you will be able to attack the objective over here. But at the same time, you have multiple options to rotate. You can go forward, you can also went back towards the stairs here, and there are so many options for you to attack the objective, the point right here. And a lot of the times, for that reason, teams usually start fighting here. But you see the lower rank players, they actually kind of skip this pass. They're usually not fighting there right away. They kind of go straight to point, which is not the best idea. This is one more example, and this is Hollywood. 2 positions. I also would name those power positions because those can allow you to control the street entirely. If the cart is moving over here, and you can usually separate any specific point on 3 fights. Usually our fight is starting somewhere in the gates. It's right to the left, you cannot see it. And then there's gonna be in the middle, one more fight, and the 3rd fight is gonna be right at the checkpoint. If you guys gonna have any questions, feel free to message me. It can be Discord, it can also be the YouTube comments or the Matify. Just send the questions there, I will be glad to answer. Let's start with the theory. What power positions are allowing you to do? What kind of benefits you have if you are on the power positions in general? Well, first off, we want to start with map control. The map control is all about the more options. If you have better map control, you have more options of how to attack. You can set up multiple angles, you can be able to control more lanes on the map as well. And I will give you an example. We're gonna have this main lane over here where the main fight is, and then there's gonna be big left side lane and also right side lane over here. And on each map, you can separate it on 3 lanes. And in here, if we are able to control the power position right away, that will allow you to control multiple lanes in theory. Yeah, you will have an easy access to all of them. So we can just go back to the main lane, or we can try to rotate all the way in here, or actually just keep our lane, yeah, keep controlling the left lane if you want to. Stuff like that. For example, it can be Dorado. Yeah, Dorado is an escort map. You see that this is a pretty long, generally speaking. Yeah, the way you rotating takes time, but teams are usually going to be starting somewhere over here, and then you transition. You keep pushing through this choke, and then right towards, I'll just call those the gates over here. This is going to be the first fight over right in the choke, and then there's gonna be a second fight over here, and the 3rd fight is gonna be on the checkpoint. The way you're gonna be moving on the lane is either by just following this red line, that's gonna be your main lane, or you can also try to go towards the right side lane. It can also even go right above the fence. It's possible to transition here, or you can also go towards the left lane, which is also pretty common. You can go all the way inside the buildings and then rotate towards the left behind the enemy too. It depends on what kind of character you play, it depends on what you're doing, but generally speaking, what we're aiming for is try to control power positions as much as possible. We not necessarily have to play there all the time. We can maybe just go there first and then after that decide what do we do. But anyway, typically we're starting with those, and some of the example of the power position here can be the stairs here, or it can also be this position right there. Yeah, actually this entire high ground, you can sort of call that power position in a way, because it just gives you such a big option of what you can be doing towards the objective. You can have so many angles of attack, you're just able to set up so much pressure this way. The second benefit is going to be scouting information, and scouting information is all about, because you're on the power position, because you're at the better spot, you are able to get information about the threats, about the enemy team composition, and because you have that information, then you can adapt. Yeah, you can think how it affects your resources, how it affects your positioning, yeah, how it affects you as a player. Yeah, think about that. There's also some things you can do regarding the cooldowns. Yeah, you not only scouting the location of the threats of the team composition, but you also can scout the cooldowns of the enemy, what they used, what your team used as well, all the positional details as well, stuff like that. And the final and most important part, in my opinion, is once we add the power position, then you have that sort of passive power. That's what I call that. And because you are playing with this position, you actually able to force out a lot of the enemy actions. And the way I like to phrase this is you can play aggressive positions passively. And those power positions are exactly allowing you to play aggressive, because you're holding there really, well, it's not necessarily deep, but it's just more powerful positions. An enemy will be forced to look at you, and if they will not, then they're gonna die. Simple as that. So let's just break down those two parts, playing aggressive and playing passive. Playing aggressive is all about you generating pressure, because power position generates it. Then you can force an enemy to rotate, use the cooldowns, use the ultimates. Enemy might be forced in unfavorable spots sometimes, and that is something what we will talk about too. You see that because people just get scared of you. Imagine the Widow sitting in really uncomfortable spot somewhere above at the power position, and because everyone sees her, because everyone knows that she can one-shot somebody, then it will be more uncomfortable. You will just be zoned out in the unfavorable space, and that is where you can get pushed. That's what you do a lot by those power positions. Your team can exactly do the same towards an enemy too. Playing passively, all about needing to have cover while holding power position. It means that you're not necessarily playing aggressive, like a lot of people imagine that you have to be out in the open or something, you have to be really exposed. No, you can play those power positions with the cover. Any of the examples I showed you, it can be this Hollywood, it can be this Busan, one map example. You do not have to expose yourself. You can always play cover. You can sit in a way that it forces an enemy actions. Maybe do a little bit of peek shooting. Think about what kind of structures you're using. There are two different structures in the game. It can be vertical structure, the normal corners like we expect to, or horizontal structures. And especially if you're in the high ground, you will find yourself using horizontal structures quite a lot. By the way, I have a full lesson on the how to use cover, and it should be on my YouTube. And I talk a lot about that, about all the structures, about how to minimize the hitbox. So it can be pretty useful, guys. If you want to take advantage of that, just watch that too. In terms of examples, I prepared you 3 replays, and it's going to be one for the tank, another one is going to be for the support, and the last one is for DPS. What we're going to start with is the tank. Let's just take a look at this gameplay here and see how the player in here is playing the power positions. Actually, both teams here, they play power positions pretty well. You see that the Winston player Gushu, they start playing at those really aggressive and at the same time positions which give them more options. Once they started the rotation, yeah, let's just go back a little bit. You will see them jumping on the top left right away, just taking more aggressive position. Yeah, they don't necessarily have to hold the main. They can instantly fight for the position which gives them options what to do towards this map. Maybe they do a little bit of scouting right on the main, but generally speaking, the top left here can give a lot of options for you to control the map. But they kind of playing slow. Yeah, they also see what the enemy is trying to do, because the enemy has more brawl composition more stationary comp in a way. They can wait for their actions first and then decide where do they go. Do they go on the right side or do they go on the left? But anyway, they decided to play here and try to prevent the enemy from taking this power position and try to burn their resources. We just kind of keep up the pressure. If we got pressured out because we don't have too many resources, then we can start playing defensive and go back. But other than that, you're just trying to play those good spots. And you see, we're being really annoying, just trying to harass the backline as much as possible and rotate accordingly. It's not necessarily that we always have to hold the power positions. No, we can always start at the power positions first and then rotate later. We can try to engage on anybody and drop from those power positions. And you exactly see that there's an Echo, there's gonna be a Zarya pushing us, and at the same time they need to deal with this high ground here. I think they have an advantage, so they don't have to rush too much. They can play it slow, just build the advantage, but you can see that the enemy here, they playing those high grounds quite a lot. Yeah, they try to take advantage of those as much as possible. And here as a Winston, you want to clear those important positions. You want to clear those most important angles. Touch the point too, hopefully, but first of all, we need to deal with aggression, the most active angles. They got some percentage. I think right now, unfortunately, the enemy has been able to get more picks, so we just need to reset and fight for another fight. But to be honest, it should be alright in the long term, as long as we can test in more active angles, which are more accessible, which might your team can take advantage of, like going on the square. If we go on the square, why is it even a choice? Because first of all, there are not too many targets to dive. Second, that's really dangerous angle. This angle here controls the power position in a way, so we can deal with that first. We can push them out, and then after that we can decide what to do. Maybe try to go towards anybody else who made a move. Maybe this Echo just flew in, or maybe there's a Zarya that used a lot of bubbles too. We can just start putting aggression, putting the pressure towards them. When we are fighting for this section, there are two positions for you to control, generally speaking. It's going to be either this high ground, which is on the enemy side, hopefully, because you need to have an easy access to their backline. You don't want to necessarily sit at your own high ground behind, unless you playing really poor character, more long-range character like Ashe. Maybe your Ashe would start there at the start and you can just poke out this angle here. But usually there's a more short-range, more dive tank. You want to be fighting for this high ground here. Or high ground near the point can also be quite valuable. You always start there, and then after that, you can decide what to do. Sort of choosing those positions which gives you options at any point of time. Even here, you see how they chose to start on the high ground, because they don't want to commit right into one angle. They setting up and then waiting for the enemy to do an action, especially because they also need their teammates follow up. They don't want to rush their decisions. But once the enemy goes in a little bit, like we see that Echo go in, okay, that's an action, that's something what they do, and then we can decide to commit. Yeah, we're not necessarily always sitting at the power positions, no, not necessarily, but at least what we're starting with is just normal position, which gives us options of what we can do, and we can scout all the information easily too. It does not have to be visuals only. We can also use the sounds. We can also just hear any animations, see any animations. Maybe our teammate's gonna ping something. And by the way, the way you play versus this composition is just slowly trying to bleed their resources, try to force out the bubbles, try to force out the Suzu. It can be also the Lucius amp, all of that stuff, and then eventually you should be winning. Winston composition here plays slower, so they can actually give the point control as long as they have good angles control here and can get rid of those. I think this can work out quite well. We see that they're using this high ground here. Yeah, they're not jumping on the target right away. Yeah, they finding ways to set up first and then go after the target next. Yeah, like here, we just jumped in on this high ground. We can deal with the Lucio. We can deal with their Freya. Yeah, and then engage after. Also drop into point, obviously, once we harassed anybody. Yeah, we don't necessarily have to kill them. We can just keep the pressure up. Keep the damage up. This is a shoe from Crazy Raccoons. They do quite well on the Kiriko, and in general, their team, I think, guys, you should be familiar with the Crazy Raccoon overall, and that they're really, really great as a team. Here, most teams usually fight for this high ground. Why? Because again, it gives us more options. We can either try to push the enemy in forward in their face, or we can try to go all the way left side, or we can also try to keep holding the high ground. It's also okay, but usually you need to take advantage of this. A lot of the times you see people also just fighting for the left side. There might be reasons why you do that, but especially if you got some sort of hit scan, some sort of more longer range pressure, it's usually more beneficial to control the high ground. And also for the divers too, it's quite nice. And you see here the Crazy Raccoon, I think in their case they not only want to control the high grounds by themselves, but they also want prevent the enemy from taking this high ground here too. So we're starting at the top, and then after that we're using this position. Yeah, they're not sitting at the power position right away. The Shu here on Kiriko is trying to enable the aggression from their team. They pushed the enemy towards the gates. The enemy makes a rotation. They should fight slower, I think, because of the Genji BAP. It's just a little bit more poke damage in my opinion. Together with, yeah, just comparing it to our support line, comparing it to our DPS, it seems that playing slightly slower on their side can be okay, but just need to find opportunity to rush something. Anyway, most of our time, once we done the rush, we will try to control the power position later. You see, they making the rotation, they're going towards, it's possible just constantly play around here and help out anybody the most aggressive controlling the power position too. Yeah, it's not necessarily that the only power position gives you a check mark or gives you a trigger that you should be contesting this guy. No, there are also multiple other things, like this guy, enemy Genji actually committed. We see that there's a speed drop from lip, yeah, they start taking damage, so we should be supporting that. But the power position here, because they're holding it, the lip is holding that, this allows them to generate so much pressure. They're being dangerous towards the enemy team. So that is more likely of what the enemy will harass. And if I know what they will harass, then we can teleport their support and just support those guys. Make sure to help them out. And after that, we can do whatever we want later. Maybe join someone else. There's also good reason to give up the power position if you can get a kill. I think that's what they also try to do partially. But yeah, you see the past supports, they're always good at supporting the most active pressure and just enabling anybody at the power positions like that. Eventually setting up the power position. Why? Because we have more longer range pressure. Suddenly we have the high noon, can be quite interesting what they can do with that now, because if we force out the enemy in unfavorable spots, then we can push that. Yeah, we can take advantage of it. Anyway, Shu is there exactly to support the power position push. Yeah, support that lip angle here, and at the same time keep an eye on anybody downstairs. But first of all, the plan is to try to set up the high noon, but because they got a pick, it's not as needed now, so we can simply push. Let's see if they do the high noon push later. There's a window from the Team Falcons though, and afterwards the response is not over the high noon obviously, but it's more over the sustain. Yeah, we just need to stabilize a little bit. We have more power at the upfront, it's fine, we can keep fighting. And you see them right after here, they're gonna be sitting in this power position again. The Hawk is contesting the point, sure, he has more sustain, there's more, it's more forgiving for the characters like Hawk to just stay on the bottom, and at the same time we need to look for the hook, so why not? We need to buy the sideline. If you have this option as a tank, you have more longer range pressure, you have a consistent damage output. It's also fine for you to use the positions, and you see how the enemy are also trying to push the Crazy Raccoon out of those positions. They need to contest those, they need to deal with those, and this is what I mean by passive power. You're playing this power positions, you have the cover, you're not forcing the fights, you forcing the enemy to make a move at you, and because you playing those positions really well defensively, then they have to deal with you, because otherwise you will be killing one of their members. Yeah, maybe you will be able to force out more resources as well. Let's start with the Tracer and talk about the power positions here. On this map, they are, like we mentioned, the high grounds. It can be the double high ground here, which is quite important. Also high ground right above the point. But it's also important to keep an eye on this cage here as well, just to making sure that we push the enemy out from here, and then afterwards we can set up our own pressure, and most importantly, deal with the power positions. Deal with those positions which give the enemy options of what they can do. So we're starting here, starting to fight slowly, because this is the high rank, and well, this is the tournament. Yeah, this is the tournament. Your angles will be contested. You cannot take the angles for free. If we're talking about the low rank players, it can be silver, it can be gold, even a lot of the times when you take the angles, when you take power positions, you will not get contested heavily. But at the high rank, at any high rank, and obviously the pro level, your angles will be contested. You will be pushed by somebody, so you need to make your way through. Even though you're trying to get to the more power positions in a way, it's important to not just jump on those right away. Yeah, this is a good direction to start with, but you see how sugar-free here, they're making their way slowly. Yeah, they're not necessarily rushing, going up the stairs, exactly, waiting, being patient, waiting for our diva to push. And once our diva is ready, then we can do the action. Now we can start be pushing. The diva is not taking the fight with them, but still, because they take it so much attention, they still have to capitalize on it, yeah, and fight the people over here. We need to deal with the angles first, with the power positions first, and we're not necessarily killing them, but forcing the resources and forcing them out of the positions. So after that, we will be able to control the objective. I don't think it's important to get a kill. You first of all have to contest the angles. You have to get rid of the enemy there. They go on the right side, just different route, but yeah, the tracer is a lot of the times you will see them using the flank positions. Yeah, sometimes they also can force point with those compositions with more dive. Can be okay strategy to do, but playing it slow, kind of just forcing the enemy action here, and after that, taking the top again. Yeah, it's just always good general direction. Like we said, it's always gonna be, there's always gonna be a good reason why you're not on the power position. If you can get a kill, or you're doing something specific, more plan related, let's say our plan is really go in on the point, tracer can go in and touch, and then force an enemy to make a move, and then after that we can capitalize with, well, maybe, but at the same time, do not forget about the power positions. Enemies will start here. You have to contest here first, and also set up your own pressure, especially if you have something like ultimate or any big valuable cooldown you can start your pressure with. Why not? Always find a way to do something from there. They're just waiting. Yeah, they not as well. The enemies are not contesting power positions first. They decided to drop, took a little bit too much poke damage, so they had to play slow, but then after that they're finding ways to capitalize of the everything. They maybe getting a kill, maybe can go for the pulse bomb. Really hard to find a pulse bomb, especially versus the diva, but once the enemies use a lot of movement and the diva is low in matrix, I think it's possible. Just any target is really hard, honestly. It's just, if you force out something like Bab Lamp, it's huge, and that's what more likely, yeah, it happened right there. If you see, this is the drone got forced out, the Bab was low HP, and then it got killed. He got killed afterwards. Sugar Free, keep using the sidelines, and goes on the right side now. Let's see what's gonna happen after. Playing the right side, sure. Yeah, a lot of stuff is happening in the point, so they have to commit to it. Obviously, you have to fight around where your team is. But yeah, afterwards, still finding ways to do something with power positions. They decided to go in the Genji, that's fine. Also, Chronic is not going sniper, didn't find a pick. So now we more of a dive direction. We have some poke capabilities too. We're starting out with the angle, and see, the power position here is going to be this position on the left side. If you go back a little bit, you'll see that's where the enemy setup. You have more options to control the entire objective. You can go all the way left, we can drop here, or we can drop there. Usually when we're on defense, then this means you have more power, you're more in control to choose what is happening. And that's why fighting for those positions is important. You not necessarily always have to put all your resources in here. Maybe you can force an enemy to make a move, and then after that capitalize a bit. But anyway, that is something what we need to keep an eye on. If you in control of that position afterwards, that will be easy for you to control the entire map. And like we said, once you're on the way to power positions like this, your angles will be heavily contested, and this is what happened. Top Dragon here is contesting Sugar Free, contesting the Lap. Lap is trying to help, and just 2v1 the Top Dragon, but I think there was also someone else who joined in here, and That's why, yeah, just maybe the Lari damage as well, and it's just gonna be really tough for the Sugar Free to survive. We're starting on the right side anyway. You're making our way through this angle and not finding a pick. That's really unfortunate. They swapped to the Tracer now. Let's see if they can make it through. First of all, contest the angle. Stop Dragon is doing really well on the Echo, it seems. Keep contesting Sugar Free. Sugar Free is trying to live and play it slow, but eventually the point is, once we got rid of the angle, which is our first step is always, then we can go deeper, we can go somewhere else. Once they're ready, once they got rid of the angle, you see the Chronic eventually been able to get the top dragon here. They're now ready to fight the power position. It always starts with map control first. Map control, make sure the angles are ready. Yep, you set up your own angle, contest people who will contest you, and then after that, you can do anything you want to, right towards the power position here. Yeah, we saw that Alari, she's been on the ledge there, will be important to contest. We can also see anybody here. Obviously, if there's a good reason to drop, if you can't get a kill like this, then go for it. Other than that, we should be good.